So I'd say one of the most common and typical language confusions is the word embarazada. A lot of people think embarazada means embarrassed, but actually means pregnant. So if you stand before the congregation and say that you're very embarrassed because you don't know a lot of Spanish, you'll actually be saying, I'm very pregnant. Shame or embarrassment is called vergüenza. So you'd have to say tengo vergüenza instead. So that's one that almost everybody makes at one time or the other. And there's lots of little language mistakes. I'd say most of it, like a lot of the time I was pretty shy and would only say stuff that I wouldn't experiment as much as I should. I'd just say things that I was pretty confident in already. So I didn't make as many mistakes. I just sound silly, or I'd have a strong accent, and I got mocked a lot for my accent, an American accent. So that was more than anything what I got made fun of. As far as weird foods, I mentioned menudo, but I'd say that the weirdest foods were, so you walk in Mexico and they have these big pots sometimes in the street, and in the bottom they just have like a pool of oil that's bubbling, and they're frying basically all the leftovers from the cow in it, and they have like strands of intestines or like chunks of lung and just like all the gross parts of the cow. And I guess I forgot that food. That food's pretty gross. We tried that once and it was not very pleasant. They do eat occasionally like soup with chicken feet in it, but I never had the pleasure of trying that one. Something you'll see in the stores occasionally are like these little, I think they're freeze dried, or like they're these dehydrated fish and shrimp, and they're just like entire fish and shrimps, and you eat them and they're not great, but they're not bad either. But they're just weird because, you know, you just pop this whole little fish or shrimp in your mouth and sort of crunch it. So, I mean, that's fun, I guess. Also, they have these weird candies in Mexico. They like mixing spicy stuff or chili with candy a lot, and that's a flavor that you have to grow accustomed to, but unique. I mean, some of them are obvious, you know, like, well, the value of the scriptures, the typical things that you'd expect from a missionary, like learning about the gospel. But I'd say one, I mean, hard work. And I'd say one of the biggest things that you'll learn that maybe you're not expecting to learn, or you probably are expecting to learn it, but it's just how to get along with people better, especially difficult people. Like, people automatically think, oh, the difficult investigator, right? So you'll have to figure out how to not argue with people of other faiths, and you'll have to learn how to resolve conflict peacefully between people of other faiths or different beliefs or ideologies. However, a lot of things, sometimes you'll have difficult companions. That's not to say that they are particularly difficult. You'll just be different people, and sometimes you'll have to figure out how to, again, resolve conflict with them peacefully. I think there's a lot of compromise. You have to learn a lot how to, like, sacrifice in order to maintain peace and happiness on both sides. You have to learn that it's not about what you want, it's about what they want. And I think you also realize that what you want isn't what you need frequently. You need to realize the difference between what you want and what you need, and for the sake of somebody else. And I think a lot of the mission is learning how to build strong relationships with your companion. And I think that's one of the biggest advices I'd give to you on the mission is try your best to become your companion's best friend, or best friends with all your companions. That will, you'll feel the spirit stronger, you'll work harder, and you'll be more happy if you have, of course, I would say never compromise the mission rules to be friends with your companions. Sometimes you'll have a companion that's not as hardworking or as strict as you, and you shouldn't compromise that. But always remember that it is very important to be friends with your companion, and hopefully very good friends. So generally the mission weather is very hot, though it does get rainy for a short period, and like in January it's briefly cold, but by cold I mean it doesn't really drop below 30. But basically you need to be prepared for a lot of heat and a lot of sun. And I think I already gave my advice, but about getting along with your companion, and also really just not compromising the rules ever. Knowing the rules are important, and especially just the concept of working hard. You'll never regret obeying a rule, I don't think, and you'll definitely never regret working to the extent of your ability. And sometimes the mission seems like the mission's the most rewarding experience you can ever have. But I guess another piece of advice I'd say is the mission is hard, and you always hear people say it's the hardest experience I've had and it's the best experience I've ever had. But I think that might be a little bit misleading. The mission is the best experience you've ever had, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be fun 24/7. And I'd say more often than not, it's hard and challenging and difficult. The mission has many fun and great experiences, but I'd say more than anything it's rewarding. When people say the mission's hard, it's not because it's necessarily physically hard. I mean, we walked all day and biked all day in hot sun, but after a while that just becomes, force of habit almost, and like easy within a couple months. So it's not physically strenuous. It's not, you're not exerting your brain too much, as in like you're learning, after you learn the language and you're just studying the scriptures every day, and it's not like it's not like school where you have to cram and test on knowledge all the time. It's harder more than anything, I think, just emotionally. It's hard sometimes when you don't have as much success as you want. It's hard being away from your family. It's hard rejection. A lot of people take that pretty seriously. Sometimes you don't have the best relationship with your companion, and it can be hard to have, that can be hard. There's tons of things that are emotionally hard, and you have to be able to deal with that. It's all things that you can deal with as long as you're being obedient and reading the scriptures and having faith. But I'd say be prepared for a challenge, and just understand that it might not be the challenge you're expecting, but it is definitely a challenge worth taking and a challenge worth conquering. And I'd say after your mission, you'll recognize, as long as you served hard and tried your best, you'll recognize it as the most valuable and significant experience in your life till that point, and maybe for your whole life, probably for your whole life.